16th episode of Living Off the Grid in the City. This is your host again, Hector Vladimir. Today is the 4th of November, 2015.
Edited and updated May 2nd, 2024.
Today I'd like to discuss an item that I have touched on in the past. It is the topic of the largest energy consumers in your home. And the title of the show today is Killing the Biggest Energy Consumers, Heating and Cooling. I want to touch this subject again because this is a very important part of attempting to get off the grid, to get rid or offset the energy consumption of the largest energy consumers in the home. This is a large technical challenge to anyone attempting to get off the grid, and if we address those or attempt to address those first, everything else is a lot easier. Everything else would seem to fall in line, because these are the showstoppers of getting off the grid, the largest energy consumers in the home. It is wise, in my view, to take care of those first and take those out of the equation, so to make your job much easier, smoother, and joyful. As was hinted by the title of today's show, heating and cooling are the largest energy consumers. 30% of all energy is used in households. This is some statistics I'm going to throw at you here. And 30% is a large percentage in comparison. Households use 30% of all energy. You have to consider there are many sectors other than the residential sector. And to think that people at their homes spend 30% of the energy consumed is baffling. That is a large percentage and a large part of the complete and total energy produced here in the United States. This is total capacity, total output of energy. Households are the largest energy consumer. That's specifically here in the United States, topping commercial and industrial sectors, which is mind-boggling. Just to think of the huge and enormous industrial capacity of the United States and the commercial expanse of the whole continental United States. To think that you and me in our homes are consuming more energy as a whole than each one of those sectors. Military, government, none of those consume more energy than the collection of people in their homes. That's, by the way, the entire residential population. As you may know, heat producers or heat generators in your home use the most amount of energy out of all the other appliances and items, electronics. But the period of use matters. In other words, the amount of time you use those items for makes a huge difference as far as how much energy they consume. Another statistic here that's quite important and the meat basically of the next few discussions and the next few shows: the top 5 energy hogs in the home. In other words, the top 5 energy consumers. I'm going to go from 5 to 1 in decreasing order. Number 5, refrigerators, consuming from 30 to 200 kilowatts per hour per month. When I say kilowatt hour or kilowatt per hour, that means 1,000 watts every hour that
appliance is on.
So if you have, for example, here 30 kilowatt hours, that's 30,000 watts spent in 1 hour of that item being on. 30,000 watts per month. That's for the low end of your refrigerator. To make it quite easy, that would be 1 kilowatt hour per day. So multiply that times 30. That's 30 kilowatt hours per month, or 30,000 watts per month on the low end, on the average, by electric refrigerators. The high end on this statistic I pulled from the internet is 200 kilowatt hours per month, meaning the average refrigerator on the high end uses 200,000 watts in 1 month, which is quite a large amount, especially if you have those industrial size freezers like some people have to freeze up meat, vegetables, and what they call sometimes organic foods that they buy wholesale. Those will probably be the ones drawing about 200 kilowatt hour per month, which is quite high. You will see the reflection of this in your power bill. Number 4 on that list is the dehumidifiers that are popular in some areas of the country, especially those areas that are quite wet and muggy and uncomfortable. Dehumidifiers use on average 160 kilowatt hour per month. Don't know a whole batch of people that do use those, but apparently those are quite popular, being listed as number 4 on the top energy consumers. So if you have one of those, just be mindful that those do consume quite a bit of energy.
Number 3.
Water heaters, big energy user, as I have mentioned sometimes in the past. 400 kilowatt hour per month on average. That's again per the statistics I pulled up, which are quite credible from howstuffworks.com. Number 2 is your air conditioner. Here we're getting into the meat of today's topic. Your air conditioner, which is your central cooling, specifically talking, draws about 300 to 900 kilowatt hour per month on average. That's the low end 300,000 watts per month, on the high end 900,000 watts per month, which is a whole lot of energy.
Per the website saveonenergy.com, the average electric bill in the United States is $144.74, and the average monthly energy usage in the US is 899 kilowatt hours.
It's difficult, but possible if you can somehow knock off your central cooling, knock that off the equation to get off the grid. You're more or less halfway there, as per my experience. For number 1 on the list, air heat, or central electrical air heating system. This is your average heat furnace, heat pump, whatever you may have. This is your central electrical heating system, which draws a whopping 1,500 to 3,500 kilowatt hours per month on average. Just to put that into perspective, that is 1.5 million watts on the low end. The high end is 3,500 kilowatt, or 3.5 million watts per month. When I say per hour per month, that is in 1 month period. That is not by any means per hour. That is per month, totaling, for example, the central electrical heating system, up to 3.5 million watt hours per month. This is on average, again, as per howstuffworks.com, which is a company of the Discovery Channel, which is somewhat credible. You can look these up yourself, and I suspect that you will find similar findings, especially when it comes to the top 5 energy users, which are commonly known as being power hogs. And you may have noticed that all of these items produce some sort of heat. They have some sort of heat producing element or device within them, and that'll tell you that producing heat takes the most energy. This is a physical phenomenon well known, that in the universe, producing heat, or any kind of environment, producing heat takes large amounts of energy, thus electrical power. So why am I touching this topic again? Why bother? Why not just be happy with what I have mentioned in the past? And this is because, as I mentioned here just shortly, taking care of these items is so vital to getting off the grid and continue to try to get off the grid, that we must pause and go over your options on how to tackle these very challenging technical hurdles that will very likely disenchant and discourage people trying to get off the grid, because they are such large energy consumers that most people just have not a clue how to possibly go around these items, especially in areas where temperature extremes or low or high temperatures occur. Not all of us live in paradise islands or coastal regions that are warm and pleasant, with a cool breeze in the summer to cool the hot weather, and a warm front comes through each winter to move out the cold. And cooling and heating for the home is a very sought after and wanted feature of the home. Some of us would, without thinking about it twice, move out of an area if it wasn't for the heating and cooling technologies in your home. So if you were looking to get off the grid and you live in one of these areas, which are basically most areas outside of the tropical zones of the world, and being within the tropics does not guarantee pleasant weather. Altitude, desert conditions, being inland or below sea level. If you live outside of these areas, or in any area that requires heating or cooling, even within the tropics, if you're trying to get off the grid, you will attempt to cover those with some type of alternative energy. And before you jump into attempting to cover that energy consumption with alternative energies, it's very wise to attempt to somehow either remove the need for those or minimize how much energy they use, since they are such large energy users. To jump right into it, let's start with number 1 on the list, heating. To combat heating costs, you can do various things. Some of them I mentioned before briefly. I'm going to go a little into more detail this time around on each one of those points. First one is listed online as something that can help, is basically to have a professional or qualified person check your heating unit every 16, 18 months, every couple of years at the very most. Check for proper fluid levels, coolant, insulation on the unit, and the related tubing and conduit. And make sure that the device is working as efficient as it can work. Having said that, there is a cost usually involved with these checks, and that's something you may also want to consider. How much will it be to keep checking these items, or pay someone to check those items on your heating system? And sometimes just getting a new, more efficient and smaller system can be a better option, especially for the long run when considering the long life of the system and the long-term costs that may add up, especially if you keep an older and less efficient device. Another thing to do is to make sure you close any vents in rooms that you hardly ever use or use very infrequently. Another thing to do about that is to just
Permanently close off air heating to
rooms that you may not need heat. Just cut the conduits going to those rooms, or the vent going into those rooms, and take it out of the system, because by your heat being diverted to that one branch going into that room, that lowers the efficiency of the system. So getting rid of that branch altogether, or that stem,
is
probably a better option than just closing off that vent from that room. But if closing the vent is the best you can do,
then
by all means. Also, you can upgrade to a timed thermostat that could automatically switch off the unit as the temperature outside gets cooler. This is not too much of a new item today, because most thermostats here in the United States are automatic. But not only have an automatic one if at all possible, but also watch it. Make sure it is switching off when it's supposed to, and make sure you adjust the temperature, because it can make a huge difference whether it switches off or stays on more often.
also
Make sure you lower the temperature
as the
temperature outside lowers. Of course, lower it to where you're comfortable, but try not to get too comfortable, because too comfortable is usually about 72 degrees.
Fahrenheit, or about 25 degrees Celsius.
And if it's 30 degrees
Fahrenheit,
outside, keeping a home at 72 degrees
Fahrenheit, or about 25 degrees Celsius.
will consume tons of energy. So find what your comfort level is. For me personally, about 65
Fahrenheit, or about 15 Celsius.
is quite comfortable in the winter. I can even go lower than that. But you also have to consider people living with you.
Me,
Their opinions also count. So talk it over with people that you live with, and find out through trials what temperature you can actually live with, the minimum temperature for cool weather. Another thing to do or try to attempt to lower the energy that is consumed by your heating system before you get off the grid is to make sure you have at least 16 inches or 41 centimeters of insulation in your attic. If you have an attic, make sure there's enough insulation where there can be any insulation. If you have walls with insulation, make sure there's enough. If you want to add more insulation, it's best or better. Too much insulation never hurt. It does help to keep your home's temperature within the home. For example, if you warm your home, it'll keep that warmth longer, meaning less energy will be used to try to keep warming that home if it keeps losing heat to the environment outside. So make sure you check your insulation, and if at all possible, maintain or add insulation as needed to maintain a high efficiency when it comes to keeping the warmth in your home. Again, insulation not only helps during the cool weather outside, but also during hot weather. And we'll touch again on that when I cover the cooling system, which is number 2 on the list. Having said that, also I'd like to mention that any rooms that do not need air or heating can be also taken out of the system itself, the network, for heating ducts. And you can also place, if you can, a room heater in each room. You can remove heating ducts altogether if that's the route you want to take, and put room heaters, independent ones. Get rid of your central system. You don't have to actually remove it. You can just shut it down, not use it. Close vents and be done with that. And you can install room heaters or individual heaters in each room. That way you can turn those off and on automatically or manually, and every time you're going to use a room. A room does not have to be at your desired temperature the minute you enter it. You can actually just turn it on whenever you're ready to use it. Wait until it's comfortable, or just turn it on and go with it. Turn it off as you exit, of course. These individual heaters, even if they're electric, will most likely save energy, the energy used, because it's just one heater working to warm up one room. And also remember to close off doors and windows in that room, of course, so the heat stays within the room. Believe it or not, will save energy very substantially. They have electric ones, but you can decide to go with gas individual room heaters. I would recommend another type, which is kerosene. Kerosene, I believe it to be safer than gas. Gas is a little trickier to store and to keep from leaking. And propane and natural gas are highly dangerous because they're in a gaseous state and they burn readily if a leak were to happen within an enclosed room. So kerosene is a liquid that the leak, if any, can be contained easier, and it's not prone to spread like a gas can. A gas, remember, will take the shape of the room if allowed to escape unimpeded. So basically the whole room may be a gas pocket ready to ignite at any high enough heat. So I highly recommend you consider either kerosene or other type of liquid fuel individual room heater, and those could work quite well and are highly efficient. I've read that some of them are above 90% efficient when it comes to fuel to heat transfer, so consider those if at all possible. You can also upgrade your current heating system, whether it's central or room heating system, to a later, more efficient model if this is a possibility, depending on your available funds and the availability of newer and more efficient systems in your area. But if this is a possibility, I would highly recommend to consider it. You can also downgrade the size of your air conditioning unit. As I mentioned before, consider the size of your home, or not only the size of your home, but the size of the areas that you may want to or may think are going to
need to be heated
at any one moment. It may not be the whole home. You may never need to heat the whole home. You may just need to heat 1, 2, or 3 rooms at one time out of a multi-room home, for example. And this could be a fraction of the total square footage of the whole home. Let's say a 2,000 square foot home, which is a quite large one on average worldwide. Out of that, you may only need to air condition or heat maybe about, let's say, 500 to 1,000 square feet, perhaps less. So consider that. Consider the size of your air conditioning to heat up, not the whole home, but consider the square footage in the area of the rooms that you will be using at any one moment. Just to mention a few things on that last point, there are a variety of high efficiency air conditioning units that are smaller and much more energy efficient than big old units. So consider those, even if the price is a bit higher for those. I would highly recommend installing those instead of just attempting to use an old system and attempting to get off the grid with it. It will make life a lot harder if you keep an old and inefficient system. Also, another way is to get rid of the AC altogether, as I mentioned earlier. This is basically a shotgun approach. You take care of a whole bunch of issues just by taking the problem out of the picture. Again, this is possible in a lot of areas of the world. Consider your area and consider whether it is necessary for you to have air conditioning, heat in particular, you may just retire the system altogether and not even worry about it. That is probably the best way to deal with the issue of covering air heat with alternative energies to get off the grid. Again, it depends on the area that you live. Here in the southeast US, we do get some rather uncomfortable weather. Not quite as extreme as some other areas here in the country, but we do get some snow, storms, icy conditions, and in the summer also we do get some pretty hot and muggy days, which on each end of the scale could be quite dangerous for certain individuals. So that's one thing you can do. If at all possible, just get rid of your air heat. Also, you may want to consider geothermal systems. These again are more expensive and complicated to install, maintain, set up, and use, but they are an option for those willing and able to install such systems. These systems work with the heat of the earth underground, and a variety of equipment is used to use that heat, that natural heat from the earth during the cool months, and also the natural cooler air in the hotter months. In other words, the temperature deep underground is usually regulated and a lot more moderate than the temperature above ground. Temperature above ground is affected by sunlight and wind conditions quite a bit. Also rain, snow. Below ground is another story. You're not using so much the temperature from the Earth's core. That's well below any reachable area in most places by way of digging. But you're using a much more moderate and regulated temperature, which stays pretty much the same year round, depending on the part of the world that you live in. So do consider geothermal systems if at all possible. Look them up, research these systems, and you may be surprised. You may be able to afford and put one of these systems in and get rid of your old air heat system. You can also consider furnaces or gas operated central heaters. These systems will get rid of your electrical power consumption, thus making you more able to get rid of your power company a lot quicker and get off the grid, especially the power grid. You can have these systems work with locally stored gas, such as LP or natural gas. Natural gas, of course, being much more complicated to store locally, but it is a very attractive option, especially if you have LP gas as the source of energy. You can also consider wood chip furnaces or other type of locally stored fuel, such as paper and even kerosene. You can also cover some of your heating, or all, if possible, energy consumption through solar photovoltaic. This does take a lot more solar panels than most of the other appliances in your home, but it is a possibility. You can generate enough electric energy to cover some or all of your heating in your home. Remember, the first step to do this is to curtail the amount of energy that you do use for heating. That way you don't require as much solar electrical energy to cover this cost. So make sure that you try to be as efficient as possible before you even commence to consider covering heating with photovoltaics. I invite you to listen to my earlier shows covering how to on photovoltaics and how it works in basic terms.
I also invite you to do some research on
prices and the various equipment included with photovoltaic systems. Get familiar with the equipment, prices, installation, and use of such systems. They are a very viable and very attractive option for anyone attempting to get off the grid. And just to touch up on the few points I brought up on heating systems and how to attempt to cover the heating in your home through alternative energies. First, upgrade to a programmable thermostat. Second, make sure the thermostat is not located near any source of heat or cold that might affect its reading. Set the thermostat to the lowest temperature at which you are comfortable. Seal or insulate your home's ducts. Make sure nothing is blocking your vents. Replace your filters regularly for your heating system. You can install gas heaters in either a central heating system or independent ones in each area where heating is necessary or convenient. You can install solar heat collectors, especially for larger rooms or areas of your home. And just a note on that, you can also install those heat collectors in areas that are separate from the home, like sheds or other buildings within your property. Use the greenhouse effect in main rooms or large rooms in the home or any other room. The greenhouse effect is nothing but allowing sunlight to come into a room and somehow being trapped in the room or circulated within the room to warm up the room during cooler months of the year. Consider geothermal systems, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago. And lastly, if at all possible, cover your heating costs or usage through photovoltaics, solar energy. And to jump into the cooling part of this show, how to cover the cooling costs, which are only second of the top 5 energy consumers in the home, or energy hogs. So they are basically the second highest consumers of energy in the home. Again, have a professional check the units or unit for proper coolant or fluid levels, and change also the insulation in your home or beef it up, add more to it. This is to allow less of the cooler air to escape. Many people throughout the world live in areas that are extremely hot, especially during the summer months. But again, like heating, if you live in a pleasant area where temperature is for the most part pleasant throughout the year, you may not even need a cooling system. So consider just getting rid of it if at all possible, and that will take care of that issue of covering cooling through alternative energies. You can also upgrade to a timed or automatic thermostat that of course automatically switches off the AC as the temperature is adjusted inside. Also, make sure you put the thermostat reading at the highest temperature that you're comfortable with. You may not need that AC thermostat set at 60 degrees
Fahrenheit
during the summer, when you can put it at 72
degrees Fahrenheit
and be just as comfortable. So consider that. Make sure you have at least 16 inches or 41 centimeters of insulation, more or less the same as your heating. And of course this will keep some of the heat outside. It will keep it out. The better insulated your home is, of course, the less energy it will take to keep it cool. If you have an opportunity to build your home or have it designed before you purchase it, ensure it is designed and built so you can take advantage of the sunlight, shade, and wind to make it as efficient as possible when it comes to keeping the home cool during the hotter months and warmer during the cooler months. If you don't have this choice, you can also attempt to take advantage of the outside conditions to keep your home cooler during the summer by having the bigger clear windows face the sunlight during the day. Here in the North American region, that would be those rooms or areas facing the south where the sunlight usually is more plentiful. You can also attempt to downgrade your AC unit. Again, just like heating, you can just reconsider the area that you use in your home, not your total home's area. You can just calculate the area, the square footage area where you will be inhabiting at any one time during the day. It doesn't have to be the whole square footage of the home or the entire square footage. It can be just a portion of it, depending how much space in the home you actually inhabit and how many people are usually in the home. Also consider window AC units, just like heaters that could be independent in each room. Window AC or air conditioning units for cooling can be independent as well. Those could be usually installed in windows, or you can get a bit more elaborate and install units through walls. And you can install those yourself. Those are pretty easy to install. Most of them run on 110 AC electric power, which is usually the power that is available in your everyday electrical outlet. Cover some of that AC cost or power consumption through photovoltaics if you're able. You can easily, relatively, cover a few, 1, 2, or more window AC units with photovoltaics. Those do not take as much power as your central AC, nowhere near for the most part. Those work, like I said, usually on 110 volt AC, and they do not draw a whole lot of amps, so the wattage on those is not too high, and you can relatively easily cover those with photovoltaics. If you have a wind system, same deal. You can cover that with your wind or other type of alternative energy system. There are others.
And lastly,
research alternative technologies like gas-powered air conditioners. Those do exist, and you may be able to get one of those put in. Research the technology, check it out, and even though they're not widely available in most areas, they are, however, an option in many areas where you can order it online and attempt to have it installed. To wrap this program up, this episode, you can combat cooling energy consumption challenges through making sure you check your unit, have it run as efficiently as possible, close vents or get rid of branches from your central AC system. That way it won't need to run as hard or consume as much energy. You can upgrade your system to a more efficient one, a smaller one, and also upgrade your thermostat. Make sure it works as efficiently as possible to keep temperature in the house at the setting you want it and use the least energy possible. You can also ensure your insulation is adequate for your cooling system. Make sure it runs as efficiently as possible. Use less energy by keeping the home's temperature inside of the home longer. You can also upgrade your system, as I just mentioned, or you may decide that you don't need your system altogether and just get rid of it if you live in an area where temperatures are moderate to pleasant. Again, you can recalculate the square footage of the home where AC is needed. You can also install window AC units, which use a lot less energy than central AC units, and get rid of your central AC unit. And you can also attempt to cover some or all of your cooling energy needs with solar, photovoltaics, wind, or other alternative energy systems.
And lastly,
you can also research alternative technologies for AC cooling, like gas-powered air conditioners or geothermal air conditioning. I have to run. This has been the 16th episode of Living Off the Grid in the City. I appreciate everyone out there listening, and I wait and hope to hear your comments and your constructive criticisms. It has been quite a pleasure to bring you this show on a regular basis, and I will continue to do so. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please look for the next episode soon, and please ensure to share this with your friends and family. And please like this content and subscribe as a sign of support and for me to continue to provide this type of content to more people like you. Lastly, if you wish to support this content further, please visit the links provided in this publication. Thank you.